Khoebaha! Good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and loving life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then loving life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard. There's a lot of things that can tear you apart. I know the roads sometimes feel lonely, but remember you're not the one and only. There's always someone there to help you, a helping hand to pull you through. There's only one thing you should do. Take my hand and join the Love and Life crew. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then the loving life guide you.
Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's very special live stream. It's not every night I have a king on my program, and tonight we have a king. This Saturday night, and just for the record, next Saturday night, on the 16th, we are having a fun evening. We're going to have 3 different singers here, all with beautiful voices, and yes, Winston Coetzee is going to be one of them. So, yeah, Brian, there is no talking with the intro song because it just gives people time to join the chat. That's why we have that. So it's a permanent feature at the start of all my live streams. Now, let's get on to the subject of tonight's discussion. The Khoi people are the original inhabitants in South Africa, a fact that is never recognized by the corrupt ANC government, with a policy of expropriation without compensation on land, which is not their land and was never stolen from the blacks in South Africa. In the wake of EWC, sorry guys, I've just had a message from the king. I don't want to keep him waiting. Okay. Right. Okay, let's get back to this. In the wake of expropriation without compensation, Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini threatened to take his people and his land and secede from the rest of South Africa. The Khoi King Cornelius formally took back his land in the Cape in 2017. Most of South Africa failed to notice the momentous occasion when King Khoebaha Calvin Cornelius III seceded the Cape from the rest of the country on Monday the 24th, 2017. Let's have a look at that event, shall we? Here we go. That's the secession document you're looking at now. This took place at the castle in Cape Town.
I see.
And here we have the lowering of the old flag and the raising of the Khoisan flag. Okay, you get the idea. Now, not much has happened since King Cornelius has actually seceded the Cape from the rest of South Africa, as is self-evident. But the Universal Declaration of Independence, which was signed at the historic castle in Cape Town on the 24th September 2017, claims the current Western Cape, the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape up to the Fish River as its sovereign territory with 15 million citizens. Secession is the action of withdrawing formally from membership and participating of any federation, body or political state. Let's have a look at the land claimed by the Khoi King. There you go. That's the territory which he has claimed. Now, as you know, there are several groups who are trying to work on secession, working with the minorities. So this is all becoming very, very complicated. Now, to put a bit of clarity on the matter, I'm now going to get the king up. I'm just going to get King Cornelius on. Here we go. Hi, King Cornelius.
Hi, good day. Good day. Yes, how are you?
Very good, very, very good. I love the headband. Can you tell me the meaning of the headband?
Every royal has a crown.
Ah, okay. So
that should answer your question.
Okay, so it's a crown. Now, let's start off, because a lot of the people who are watching the live stream probably aren't aware of the Khoi history. Can you give us just a brief outline on the significance of the Khoi as the original indigenous people in South Africa? Just so that people understand the significance of the Khoi.
Before I start, is it possible I can see you? I don't see you.
Ah, look,
so, it's like me speaking to myself.
The trouble is that my streaming software captures my camera, so I can't actually come on, unfortunately. But I'll put it so that we're both on. So when you watch the show later, because this will be archived, you'll be able to see me there as well.
Okay. The history of the Khoi. A few years ago, my son came to me, we was in primary school, and says, Daddy, the teacher says that there's no Khoisan people anymore. They're extinct and the language is extinct. And I said to him, write down, my boy. And he wrote down, and I said, in the very beginning, the only people that roamed the plains of southern Africa was the Bushmen. Nobody else. And they started trading cattle and fat-tailed sheep with China and Egypt. And they started eating more meat and drinking more milk. And the children that was born from them were bigger and stronger. And they called themselves Khoi, men of men.
Right.
So the Khoi and the Bushmen are ancestral relatives. So this is why a few years ago, people decided to politicize and make it politically correct to call themselves, or to call us, Khoisan people. That we are actually Khoi and Bushmen. We are the first nation indigenous people of Southern Africa.
Could I ask you a little favor? Yeah. Could I ask you a little favor? Can you just sit back a little bit, because the light is only just touching your nose? That's much better. That's fantastic. Now we can see you properly. That's great. Okay, so what happened historically was that the Khoi were roaming the areas around what is Cape Town today, and on the 6th of April 1652, Jan van Riebeeck landed with his party, and they started doing deals with the Khoi over land and stuff like that, and trading with the Khoi. And obviously, over a period of time, the area they settled increased and increased. Now, what impact did that have on the Khoi people?
My wife is a playwright, and in the beginning she did research for about eight years about how the Cape was truly colonized. And she wrote a 2.5-hour stage production of how the Cape was truly colonized. But it was too big for the stage. And American directors flew down and they wanted to produce it on the big screen. But they wanted to buy from us and have the rights to it. And we couldn't sell it there. But let me tell you how it came about. Jan van Riebeeck came to the Cape specifically looking for Harry de Strandloper. Because Harry de Strandloper was the postmaster for the English East India Company. And Jan van Riebeeck was for the Indian East Indian Company. So when he came to Jan van Riebeeck, he asked him to be his interpreter. And then he sent Jan van Riebeeck out to acquire sheep and cattle for the way station in Cape Town.
Right.
But the chaplain that came with him, wife was pregnant. And she was the first woman, a colonial woman, to give birth in Southern Africa. And they needed a childminder. But now Harry de Strandloper's niece, Krotoa, was his childminder because his wife was deaf and dumb. And then he offered Krotoa to Jan van Riebeeck to be the childminder at the age of 10 years old. And a year later, in 1653, when Harry de Strandloper came back after his excursions, he specifically went to look for Krotoa and he couldn't find her. And then he found, it was on a Sunday morning, everyone was in church, and then he found her in the fort. And he stole her out, and he stole all the cattle in the kraal, killed a Dutch herd boy, and he ran.
Right.
And he ran all along the coast to Hout Bay. And when he came to Hout Bay, the chief at the time there, of the Khorogokwa tribe, said to him, on all the horns of the cattle was stamped VOC, Dutch East India Company. He says, now I have nothing to do with the commander, please leave. Harry and Krotoa them left with the cattle all the way over the mountain and came to a place called Lisbeth area, where Krotoa's mother was married to the chief Gogosowa at the time. And there they took all Harry's cattle away from him and chased him away. Harry and Krotoa then left to her sister, who was married to Chief Odosowa, who was of the strongest clan in the Cape at the time. And he lived on top of Table View. And there they stayed for 4 years, where Harry taught Krotoa English, Dutch, Portuguese, and she could speak 18 different dialects of the Khoi language.
Wow.
And 4 years later, he came back to the fort and offered Krotoa to Jan van Riebeeck as an apology for killing the Dutch herd boy, and told him that he can now use Krotoa as his interpreter. She then became Jan van Riebeeck's interpreter, met his scribe, Pieter van Meerhof, who was the undersurgeon for Robben Island. With the first Khoi-Dutch war in 1659, Jan van Riebeeck became so frustrated with not defeating the Khoi, because the Khoi was clever at the time. They only attacked the fort in the rain because they knew that the Dutch couldn't light their flintlocks to kill them. And Jan van Riebeeck gave a written order and he put it on the door of the fort, and he says, for every Khoi person you kill, cut off the upper lip and I'll pay you for it. So the Dutch went out and cut off the upper lip of the Khoi that was dead and alive, and they were paid for it. And we see it in the movies years ago by the cowboys and Indians. Now the cowboys were paid for the scalps of the Indians. The same thing happened in Cape Town, and Krotoa saw that, and she then eventually dissolved the first Khoi-Dutch war. But she then fell in love with Pieter van Meerhof, and because she fell in love with Pieter van Meerhof, they had a relationship, and their relationship, they had children born out of that relationship. So when Jan van Riebeeck left, but she was also the first Khoi woman to be baptized as a Christian. So when Jan van Riebeeck left, Wagenaar became the commander of the Cape. And Pieter van Meerhof and Krotoa, went to Wagenaar and asked him, please, can you read our banns of marriage in church?
Right.
So that we can get officially married. And the banns was read in church in the castle. So Pieter van Meerhof and EFF van Meerhof then got married.
Yes.
And they got a promotion. Pieter van Meerhof he became the first governor of Robben Island. And they moved to Robben Island. And on many of his excursions, Pieter van Meerhof eventually died in Madagascar. And when he died, they took Krotoa off the island because she started drinking excessively. Because now she's lost her husband. And she was a woman in between because the Dutch wouldn't accept her because she was Khoi. And the Khoi rejected her because they felt she was a traitor.
Right.
And then they took her children away from her because she was drinking excessively. But we need to understand that Krotoa grew up in the Dutch culture where they had wine for breakfast, beer for lunch, and rum for supper. And because of that, she drank more. And she became an embarrassment to the Dutchies in the company. And she became the first woman prisoner on Robben Island, where she fell one day and banged her head and she died. And they buried her on Robben Island. And a few years later, they exhumed her body because of her status as a princess of the royal family of the Khoi. They then buried her in the castle. A few years later, Lady Anne Barnard came and she wanted a dolphin pond in the castle. And they exhumed her bones, and she then became part of the foundation of the Grote Kerk in Adley Street. And up until today, we still honor her and respect her. And I think it was 2001, I did the Footsteps in Cape Town, where I was the first Khoi person ever to go in the Grote Kerk and pray for my ancestors that was buried in the foundation of the Grote Kerk.
Wow.
So that is just a synopsis of how the Cape was colonized during that time period.
Yeah. Now,
so the atrocities. Sorry.
Yeah. Now, the area that the Khoi claim, I mean, really, if you think about it, the whole of South Africa was Khoi land. What happened was if I'm correct, and I need you to clarify this, if I'm correct, history suggests that the Bantu and Nguni people came down from the north and basically stole the land from the Khoi and the San people in places like KwaZulu-Natal and what is today the Limpopo region.
You must understand, Scott, that the history is so fragmented. But I'm fortunate. I am the firstborn child for 16 generations dating back to 1695.
Right.
So my history has been recorded not by me, but by academia. So the stories that have been handed down from generation to generation, I know. I speak of what I know and what's been told to me by my ancestors and by my grandparents. Now, my great-grandmother, his name is Maria Jonker Afrikaner. And she was 99 years old when she died and I was 13. My grandfather was 85 years old. But let me tell you a story about what happened about the land. South Africa was divided into two monarchies. Below the Fish River was the Jan Jonker Afrikaner dynasty. And above the Fish River was the Khoisan dynasty of the Khoi, the big defenders. They were the ones that defended the Xhosas and the Zulus and the Bantus, or the Nguni, from coming into South Africa. So, when in 1834, the vagrancy law was passed, where we as slaves were now made free, but we still had to serve an apprenticeship for another 4 years before we were really freed. So in 1838, Jan Jonker Afrikaner left Cape Town with his people. They were frustrated with colonization and how people were brutally killed and murdered and raped. And they left and also because of the smallpox epidemic. And all the way up along the west coast they fought, all the way, and he landed up in Southwest Africa, where he named the town Klein Windhoek. But during that same time period, the Khoisan defenders, the big defenders above the Fish River, also discovered and lived through the atrocities after the 1777 Katrefi rebellion, with the Dutch and the Xhosas fighting, and they in between. And then Cornelius and his family left, and they went to assist Jan Jonker Afrikaner in Namibia, or in Southwest Africa, where in a place called Honduras, the two of them signed a peace treaty in 1858. The two of them signed a peace treaty that they are the only two monarchs of the Khoisan people of Southern Africa. Cornelius died in 1863. Nobody knows where he was buried because he was killed fighting for freedom. And then his son Barnabas took over, and he was eventually killed. And then his son Petrus took over. But during that time period, Jan Jonker Afrikaner was also killed. And his son Christo took over. And 3 years later he was killed, and his brother Jan Jonker Afrikaner took over. But he had no sons left. He only had a daughter, and her name was Maria Jonker Afrikaner. And he sent her down to Marmarie because he wanted her out of the fighting. And then when he died, Petrus Cornelius then left because he knew Maria Jonker. And he went to Marmarie and went to fetch her. And the two of them got married. And he was given back his status in Queenstown, in Dordrecht, a place called Dordrecht in the Eastern Cape. He was given a horse racing farm in lieu of his status as the king of the Khoi. In 1910, when Afrikanerdom came into power, the horse racing farm was taken away from him, and he was chased away from the farm so the people could be leaderless. But his firstborn son, David Daniel Cornelius, was born on that farm. And they then came to Cape Town, where David Daniel Cornelius met Henrietta Arendse, and they married. And they had a firstborn son named John Peter Cornelius.
Now, can I just interrupt for a second? You've referred to, now Cornelius seems to be a very significant name amongst the Khoi people. And you've mentioned Afrikaner. Have you heard of Jager Afrikaner, who was the fellow up near the Griqua town that used to go and grab cattle and run off with the cattle and stuff like that? He was like a bit of a bad boy, you could say, and then Robert Moffat went and actually miraculously brought him to Christianity. Have you heard of that story with the Afrikaner? Is that any relation to the other Afrikaner you're talking about?
Absolutely. They are all, you see, Afrikaner is a clan.
Yeah.
It's the name of the clan. They were Jan Jonker they were called Afrikaners.
Right.
But let me come, I'll get back to that point now.
Yes, please.
So when David Daniel Cornelius then married Henrietta Arendse, they had the firstborn son named John Peter Cornelius. And he met Teresa Magdalena Roman, and they married. And their firstborn son name was Calvin, then John Cornelius, and that's me. So in 2001, when I was sworn in as the king in Genadendal, at the last known kraal of the Khoi, I was then taken to court. And at court, I was taken to Judge John Schlope for him to sign a document. But he said to me, we're busy now, and please go to the chief magistrate. He'll stamp and sign it. And the chief magistrate, Johan Venter, eventually stamped and signed the document. And this document, this is the answer to your question, this document says, I am the legal custodian of all Khoisan land of Southern Africa. And then they asked one of the old people, and says, now where is Khoisan land? And she says, from the Orange River to Cape Point, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean, that's all Khoisan land. And then someone says, you mean the whole South Africa? She said, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that answers your question is South Africa Khoisan land? Absolutely, no question about it. And as the custodian of the land, ratified by the court as the custodian of the land, it is my responsibility to see that the land and the people is no longer abused.
Right. Now,
so I hope that answers your question about the land.
Yeah, we'll get onto the land in a second. I'm intrigued by the commonality of names between the Griqua people who lived up in the just north of the Orange River in a place called Griqua town, because one of their chiefs was Cornelius, which is your name. Now I'm just wondering, is there any tie-up between that? That was Cornelius Koch, and he was the son of Adam Koch. Now,
that's right.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of association through family or anything like that with the Griqua people in that area?
No, but I know about Cornelius Koch. I know the history very well.
Yeah.
You see, because Cornelius was such a valiant warrior, everybody named their child, or most people during that time period, named their child after this valiant warrior.
Ah, so that's where Cornelius comes.
That's where the name Cornelius comes from. But my surname is Cornelius, not my name.
Right.
My family name is Cornelius.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Now let's get back to the land question, which is something that's on everybody's lips. I want to read to you what Cyril Ramaphosa said yesterday in Stanger. This is his statement. He said, "We want them to run businesses and employ others. We want radical economic empowerment and transformation to the order of the day," he said after handing out title deeds in the Stanger area. And he went on to say the ANC is now involved in a massive project to give our people's dignity back to them by giving title deeds and land. We are committed to this irrevocably. Our people's dignity was rubbished by apartheid rule, said Ramaphosa. Title deeds were part of an economic renewal process that would lead to empowerment. He said our people can empower themselves with assets, including land. We are going to give land to our people. We are just not going to talk about it. We have to set up an inter-ministerial committee to look at land renewal and reform. We are going to set up an expert task team that is also doing that. The slogans are now over. We are now going to give land to our people. This is the fulfillment of a promise the ANC made, because we are listening. We are a listening organization. Now, clearly, this is not their land.
They must stop lying to the people. I say to Jacob Zuma on national television, he's a liar. I tell Cyril Ramaphosa, he's a liar. You know why I do that, Scott? To invite them to come talk to me. They refuse to speak to me.
Yeah.
Every politician, every president refused to speak to me. In 2005, when the Xhosa king died, I was invited to the funeral. And around the table was the other kings. Thabo Mbeki was the president at the time. And his mother sat next to me and she said to me, "Oh, my child, I've been waiting so long to meet you." The other kings shook my hand and spoke to me. Thabo Mbeki wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't take my hand. All he did was he lifted up a glass and saluted me. But if he had spoken to me, he would acknowledge me.
Yeah.
If he had taken my hand, he would acknowledge me. So he didn't want to acknowledge me because he couldn't allow himself to acknowledge that the Khoi exists. Jacob Zuma sent a delegation to my house to offer me what can I do for the Khoisan people when I become president. When he became president, he refused to talk to me. He refused to see me. I sent letters to Parliament. I eventually sued him for cultural genocide, took him to the High Court. He sent a DTI lawyer to offer me 44 million rand out of court settlement, but he wouldn't talk to me. So while he was president, Cyril Ramaphosa is deputy president. They fly me down to Johannesburg to have supper with Ronnie Mowepa, who's the spokesperson for Cyril Ramaphosa as deputy president. And I speak to Ronnie, I says, "This is our problem we have. Nobody listens to us." So he says, no, I will speak to the deputy president and I will arrange that the two of you have a meeting. Ronnie Mowepa had died already. He's buried. Cyril Ramaphosa became president. He still won't speak to me. And now the question I ask myself is, why don't they want to speak to me? Am I that untouchable? Am I that, am I not a nice person to talk to? Am I not easy to communicate with? All I want them to do is, there's an old Khoisan saying in life that says, just listen for once to what we have to say, so that you never be ignorant of the Khoisan nation again. But nobody listens, and they won't give us a right and a chance to speak publicly. Media don't touch me. Media wants nothing to do with me, because when I speak the truth. I've learned over my short lifespan that truth spoken with kindness frees much more than it hurts than truth spoken with aggression. Because truth spoken with aggression becomes a curse. So all I want to do is tell them the truth of who we are, where we come from, and what we want. We don't want the whole South Africa. All we want is to be recognized as legitimate citizens of our ancestral land. That is all. Because for all our life we have been ignored. From the time of colonialism, we were ignored. You know, when Anthony became here the very first time, he asked us, "Who are you?" And we had no name. And we said, "I'm Khoi." Khoi means man.
Yeah.
And he said, and that man over there in the bush, this is a bushman. This is no, you know, we call Hottentot and Bushman. So the English comes along and says, "Now who are you?" I says, "They say we're Hottentot and Bushman." He says, no, you're non-Europeans. So the free beggars come and says, "Now who are you?" I say, "They say we're non-Europeans." He says, no, you're non-white. Apartheid comes along and says, "Now who are you?" It says we're non-white. He says, "No, you're colored." Democracy comes along, supposed to give us back our true identity, our true name, and they scratch off the books. We no longer exist, we're invisible. So now they want to pass a legislation and say, you are now lesser people than the Nguni people. Why am I invisible? We are the Aboriginal people of the land. So we never get a chance to speak the truth.
Have you?
And you know what they do?
Yeah, carry on.
You know what they do? They create scenarios to divide and conquer.
Right.
They say to one leader, "I will acknowledge you, but here's some money, here's some titles, and you speak on my behalf, and I'll acknowledge you." A few years ago, I think it's 2 years ago, Mukheng, the Chief Justice, is invited down to the castle in Cape Town to inaugurate 5 kings. Now, this is what we had, 5 kings. I'm not invited. So I know there cannot be 5 kings because I'm the only bloodline king of the Khoi that can prove and validate and say what I'm saying. And I've invited anybody else who says, if you say you're a king, come and show me your bloodline. So Mukheng comes down and then we have a meeting with one of the judges and I says, but how can he as a Chief Justice swear in 5 kings? He says, no, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. He came to pray for them. No. But the subliminal messages that went out and the messages that went out that the Chief Justice came to inaugurate 5 kings. Now, government is now told that they need to speak to those five groups of people or 5 kings. And government decided that there must be 5 groups, the Griqua, the Nama, the Kurana, the Bushman and the Khoi. Government decides our culture for us. They have no authority. Our culture is determined by our way of life and by our history. So they dilute our history so much and they dilute our culture so much for their own convenience. Now Cyril Ramaphosa wants to give land away that he has no authority over. He has no authority over that land that he wants to give away.
Right.
So what is going to happen? Exactly with the same thing as I told people when we went to buy the Sentinel Mountain in Hout Bay. I said to them, you buy the mountain, you'll be buying stolen property. And there's a law in our country that it is a criminal offense to be in possession of stolen property. So the question is, who authorizes this? As the legal custodian. Now you can understand, Scott, the reason why they don't acknowledge me. Because when they acknowledge me, that document becomes a legal instrument. Now the legal instrument says, I am the legal custodian of all Khoisan land.
Yeah. Now doesn't the UN recognize the Khoi as the original inhabitants in South Africa?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you bring up that point, Scott. You see, in 2007, the United Nations passed the Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People. 143 countries, including South Africa, signed that declaration saying we are the first nation indigenous people and all the articles attached to that declaration. So now they try to get out of that signing of that declaration saying that, you know, we weren't ready and all the excuses in the world, but they cannot withdraw their signature from it. So what they do is now they've drafted a traditional Khoisan leadership bill and saying to the United Nations that if the Khoisan sign this traditional leadership Khoisan bill, they then deny that declaration for the rights of indigenous people, they will abide by the rules of South African government. That is the only way they can get out of the declaration of the rights of indigenous people that they had signed with 143 other countries. So after they signed that, they then invited us to be part of the drafting of a white paper to include us into the House of Traditional Leaders in 1999. Because the United Nations passed, sanctioned us as First Nation indigenous people in 1997 already. So they found out that, hang on, we now on slippery streams, because in 2001, I was the Vice President of Controlessa for the Western Cape, the only Khoi person in Controlessa. And then they gave me a mandate to go speak on their behalf at the United Nations, because they are not represented at the United Nations as indigenous people. Nobody knew that. The black people of South Africa is not recognized at the United Nations as indigenous people of Southern Africa. So they used me to go speak on their behalf, and when I realized I was being used, I didn't speak on their behalf. When I came back, I resigned from Contraless. And they asked me why. I said, because you people are using us. And they said, no, we get all the invitations from the United Nations because we are the body that represents culture in South Africa. So I says, wow, so you people are getting all the invitation that's supposed to come to us. Because in 2001, Scott, I spoke to the Chief Willie Littlechild of the Cree Nation, and he invited us to be part of the World Indigenous Olympic Games. I said to him, wow, Indigenous Olympic Games. This is how the Olympic body has sanctioned that the Indigenous Games of all indigenous countries of the world will become part of the Olympic body. And I came back to South Africa with all these documents, and I went to the the governor says, we have been invited to be part of the World Indigenous Olympic Games. Can you please fund us for this project? And he says, we cannot fund anything out of South Africa, any cultural event out of South Africa. We only fund cultural events in South Africa.
Wow.
A few years later, Scott, I'm been informed by the United Nations that the black people are there representing the World Indigenous Olympic Games.
Oh,
Can
no.
you believe it?
That's ridiculous.
But it's true. But it's true. That shows again how invisible we are in the land of our ancestors.
That is just incredible. Look, there's a great injustice that's been done to your people right through South African history. There's no question about that. What I'd like to do before we turn on to those sort of subjects is ask you about your secession from the Cape. That was on, let's see, the 24th September 2017, when the new flag was raised at the fort. Can you tell me about that day and what led up to that day?
All these things I'm talking to you about now, Scott, led up to that. Nobody's listening. I have a legal advisor, Professor Winston Nagin, who was exiled in 1963. And he went to London, studied at Oxford, went to university in America, studied at one of the famous universities there. But he's a world expert on indigenous and international law and human rights law. He is one of 12 jurisconsults in the world that advise judges on how to pass judgment. And he's been my advisor since 2008. And I have been his tutor, or I've been his student for that long. And with all the knowledge that he's shared with me and told me about, the only way for us to be acknowledged is to separate ourselves from South Africa. Because they don't acknowledge us. They don't see us. So we decided that a declaration of secession would be the only way out. So on the 24th September 2017, I went to the castle. It was a Sunday morning. I will never forget it. This Sunday morning at 12 o'clock, I arrived at the castle, and there was a massive big drone hovering above me, because government knew what I was going to do. And during the whole secession, 12 minutes into our secession, all internet was cut off. All internet. But fortunately, we had a video camera.
Wow.
And then I knocked the pole in the ground with a board, and I says, I secede from South Africa. And the Western Cape, the Northern Cape, and parts of the Eastern Cape were by the Fish River. And they asked me, why only by the Fish River? I says, because in 2004, I re-signed the peace treaty with King Zandile of the Khoisan Kingdom. Now, King Zandile was the first king that came over the Khoi River in 1745, when he met my great-great-grandfather, Cornelius, Mundora, they called him Mundora at the time. And they signed the peace treaty. And they lived in harmony. And because the Bushmen killed the Xhosa cattle walking around because it was food, they think it was food walking around, there was a Khoi Dutch war, the Khoi Xhosa war in that area.
Right.
And that peace treaty was then re-signed again. And then the Xhosa king, King Zandile from the Khoisan Kingdom, married the Khoi queen. And then the firstborn son, after the orphan daughter was killed on the mountain called Ndoda, the Khoisan king married the Khoi queen. The firstborn son of the king left because he couldn't handle it. That his mother now married the king as part of the peace treaty. That is why there's a split between the Xhosa and the Khoisan. Now the Xhosa called themselves Galika, and then Khoisan. So there's a split between the two kingdoms. So when the mixture of Khoi and Xhosa happened, that group of people were then called Khoebaha. They were the Black Khoi in the Eastern Cape.
Right.
So when that peace treaty was signed, that land that was signed those years ago, I went and honored it in 2004. So this is why only up until the Fish River the land was taken. So I handed all the documents to government and saying, we now seceding from South Africa. And they ignored me completely. They didn't take notice of my statements or my letters like they've done for the past 20 years. That I am a non-entity. So with Professor Nagin's guidance, he says to me, the only thing we can do now is to put in place all the requirements under international law to make your secession legal. He says you need to have a shadow government. I said, okay, Prof, I'll do that. So I get a shadow government. And I appoint people in portfolios, like you remember in the portfolio of education, you remember in the portfolio of housing, you remember all those particular portfolios. So I says, Prof, I've got that. He says, now you need to have the land. I says, oh, we've got the land. He says, and you need to have the people. And this is when we decided that we need to have a memorandum of unity. And then we signed the memorandum of unity amongst the Khoi, the Colored, the Eurokaner, and the Afrikaner. And then they asked me now, why the Eurokaner? I says the Eurokaner is the English-speaking white people. And they have more knowledge about artificial intelligence. So they need to come to our country and teach us about the fourth revolution coming. And he says, the Afrikaner boerenvolk, I says, well, they know how to farm, and we're going to need food. And we're going to need to be taught how to farm. And these are the people that know how. But above all, they have no hope of where they are now. Their plight of apartheid that they're living in now, the reverse apartheid, but the plight of apartheid they're living in now, they cannot handle this. When you see how, or when you read how women are being killed, how women are being raped and gutted, how children are being put in ovens and burnt alive just because they're white. Oh, that's not what God intended for the land. So we invite him and says, come, you all are welcome to come live in this country called the sovereign state of Kudu. But to live here, you need to qualify. Now when I say qualify, Scott, I mean that we need to sign the oath of allegiance. That's all that you need to do.
Right.
Is sign the oath of allegiance. So that oath of allegiance qualifies you to live in this country where there's going to be no politics. Because we know that politics, the word poly means many. And tics, we know in Afrikaans, as a bosluis. So politics is many people sucking you dry. So we're not going to have politics in this country. People are going to apply for their jobs via their portfolios, via their CVs, put it that way. So we're going to have experts in various portfolios. So what we've done in the interim period, there's 5 portfolios that governs the country. You have economics, environment, health, education, and foreign affairs. Those are the 5 main portfolios that governs the country. Mm-hmm. So what we've done in the interim period, we have specialists, experts in those 5 portfolios in the interim period for now. And they have policies drafted already for the benefit of the people living without politics, where everybody is equal. There's no race classification because everybody are sovereign citizens. So I said to Prof, okay, Prof, we've got that. He says, now we need to go to the United Nations to apply for observer status. I said, okay, Prof, we can do that.
Right.
So, but I don't have money. We've set out websites, opened up websites out of people at the goodwill. We had a PayPal account, and believe it or not, Scott, the most money we got out of the PayPal account was $2,000.
Wow.
The most. But I heard later on that we got much more, but the money appeared along the avenues coming to me. But we leave it at that. That's a conversation for a different time. So a woman comes and says, where do you want to go? I says, as soon as I possibly can. She's on the computer and she's typing and she says, you're flying next week. I says, but how? And in that time period, Professor Nagin is retiring from the University of Florida in Gainesville. So I fly down to Gainesville. And en route to Gainesville, I fly via Doha to Miami. And in Miami, I got to change my baggage to go to Gainesville. When I get in Gainesville, Scott, my bag is torn open and all my documents for the United Nations is gone.
Oh my God.
My lock is still on the zip, but the flap is torn open and documents are gone. But they think we're not that clever in South Africa. You see, I had a package carrying with me, and I had a memory stick.
Yeah.
So I get to Gainesville, and I speak to Professor Nagin, and with his retirement party, there's a judge from the federal court of Brazil, and he asked me, now, why do you want to do this? So Professor Nagin and myself explained, and he says, go do it. That is a utopia. Even people from the World Bank was there. They invited me to come to there's going to be a meeting, supposed to be a meeting in October last year, of all world leaders for the World Bank. They even invited me to come along, because they thought that by that time we will be finished. So from Gainesville, I fly to Atlanta, from Atlanta to New York. And I get to New York, and 2 South African women are there waiting for me. 2 white South African women. Karen Smith and her daughter. They out in Texas, and they flew out, and they put me up in Brooklyn in a house that I've got big shoulders, Scott, that my shoulders wouldn't fit through the door. But they fed me for a week, and they looked after me for a week. It was the first time in my life I ever played in snow, but it was all part of my experience.
Yeah.
And they were with me to the United Nations, and I came there and I says, they said, did you go to the African embassy? I says, I am not a South African citizen. I come from the sovereign state of Good Hope, and I'm the ruler of the country. And he says, well, you don't need an invitation, you don't need accreditation, you don't need any paper, you just need an invitation from the President of the General Assembly. I said, fine, I'm right here. So I phoned the office of the General Assembly, because we knew that the General Assembly was sitting that time. And they said, no, the President of the General Assembly is out of the country. I said, and the Secretary General, no, she's also out of the country. So I said, okay, fine, can I send you an email? He gave me the email address, and now, fortunately in America, we had unlimited calls with one of the SIM cards. So I phone, and they give me another email address. I send it to that email address, and I phone again. Did you receive my email? Eventually, the Nevada State Police phones me and says, the Nevada State Prison phones me and says, you're hacking our phone. I says, please. No, I'm not. I'm phoning the President of the General Assembly. He says, no, it's the 4th time now that we're going to call the state police. He says, please call them. Eventually, after 17 phone calls, Scott, they send me an email saying, you can now stop phoning. We received your email to the President of the General Assembly. So I phoned Professor Nagin. I says, Prof, they got the email. Can I come home now? He says, no. Now you need to give them a hard copy. So while we're busy with that, I go to the African Union Observer Station at the United Nations, which is across the road from the building. And I go see the chairperson there. No, she's not available. She's at the United Nations. I say, is there anybody I can see? I want to tell you about what is happening in South Africa, about the sovereignty of the Good Hope. And they send the woman over to me, and she says that. I explained to her, I says, can I send you the email? She says, yes. Gave me the email address. I says, can I give you my business card? She says, yes. I says, can I have one of yours? She says, no, I can't give it to you. She said, okay, can we have a photograph together? She says, no, I'm not allowed to. And then I knew there's a bigger snake in the grass than
yeah.
There really is.
Yeah.
So Professor Nagin says, give them a hard copy of the United Nations. So I phoned one of the directors of the United Nations General Assembly, and I said to her, I need to give you a hard copy. She says, just hang on a second. She came back, she says, I can't take it. I says, for 365 years, nobody listens. I fly 47 hours to come to you, and you still want to listen to me. She says, how can I help you? I says, I need to give you a hard copy. She says, I can't take it. I says, who in the United Nations can take it? She tells me, nobody. I phone Professor Nagin. I says, Prof, nobody can take a hard copy of the United Nations. He says, go to a courier company and let them deliver it for you. Because when the United Nations received it, they must sign that say they received the hard copy. He says, fine, Prof. And the next morning, Scott, I tell you, I've never been as cold as I was in New York. It was minus 3 degrees, but that cold that your nose and your throat burn when you breathe.
Yeah.
And we go to the courier company, and I hand in the documents, and I get a receipt saying that the document's going to be delivered. And at that moment when I got the receipt, it snowed for just that moment, and then it stopped. It was an emotion that I cannot explain to you how I felt.
I know exactly what you feel.
I cried.
Yeah.
I cried. I said, Prof, I'm finished. He says, come home. Come back to me. So I fly back to Professor Nagin. And he says, now we need to give the government an eviction notice. I say, okay, Prof, but you have to draft that. I don't know how to do that. He says, no, I'll draft it. And he says, we have to give him 5 days. I said, Prof, why 5 days? He says, I said, in South Africa, the sheriff comes here with the eviction notice, 1 day you must be out. He says, the reason we give them 5 days is to take away the excuse that they don't have enough time. I said, okay, Prof, we do that.
Yeah.
He says, but what's also important is that the wording of that document is important. And I'll tell you now what the wording is. So I come back and I speak to my people, and we now decide that we need to give the president an eviction notice out of our country. We're not giving them enough time. So on the 16th of July, 2018, I go with a delegation of 24 bodyguards, because my people are scared of, fearful for my life, because I have now threatened the South African government by taking away their land and giving opportunity to 15 million people for freedom. So I have 24 bodyguards and 6 cars, and we drive through to the Parliament, and we block off Plain Street, and they walk with me inside to Parliament, and I come there and I hand in my ID document like normal. I want to go to the president's office, and he said, don't worry, the office will come to you. So I'm sitting waiting with my generals and my bodyguards, and one of the office workers from the president's office comes, and I say, here's documents as an eviction notice for the president to leave my country. Please sign and stamp that you have received it. So eventually he forgot the stamp. He had to go back for it, and he came back and stamped and signed it. And as on our way out, an eviction notice was placed against the door of Parliament. And then they told me, please get in the car and leave.
Yeah.
So 3 cars left with me, but 3 cars stayed behind. And all my people were standing in front of Parliament, and 4 South African flags were taken down. And I'm sitting in the car, and we are being followed by the police. But now I have, my security was highly trained, and they knew exactly what to do to keep me safe. So the flags were taken down, and 4 sovereigns to the good old flags were hoisted. And they sent me the video while en route home. Scott, it was an emotion set to the man. I cried. It was unbelievable.
I actually played that video. I played that video at the very start of this video, of the live stream of the flag. So you'll see it later.
Okay.
So carry on.
Okay. It was an unbelievable emotion. It was. And then the flags were flying for 2 hours, and we got a message that the police didn't know what to do. They didn't know that they were allowed or could go take down the flags, because they knew when you take down a flag of a country and you hoist another flag, that country will defend the flag. So they didn't know what to do or how we were going to defend that flag. But we had made a statement. We gave them 5 days to leave the country. So during that five days, we invite 700 media houses throughout the whole world. Come. We're having a press conference at the convention center in Cape Town. 30 media houses answer us via email. They're coming. 3 comes. The Sun, the Argus, and the Cape Times.
3 reporters out of 700.
3 come.
Wow.
And it's local newspapers. It's the one is a pony newspaper, and the others is just newspaper journalists. But the girl from the Sun newspaper does a live stream of what is happening in Parliament. So I go back to Parliament and I say to them, I've given you 6 days to leave. 6 days to leave. So I phoned Professor Nagin. I says, Prof, we've given them 6 days and they still ignore us. He says, now this is important. The eviction notice that I drafted for you, it says, under international law, if you ignore this eviction notice, it is deemed that you have accepted it. And then there was a newspaper and television. One of the spokesperson from the president's office said, "Oh, we ignore this." And that in itself says that under international law, by them ignoring it, it is deemed that they have accepted it. So now we're making plans, right? Scott, we now need to make plans, get everything in place, get the people in place, get the infrastructure in place, because we now need to close the borders. We need to close the borders to assert our state, our sovereign state. Because our monies has already been planned. That is going to be called the sovereign.
Yeah.
But that's not a topic for another time. Everything is in place. Every single thing. But now we have opposition from other organizations that they want to do a secession. And I says, oh, they cannot do a secession within a secession. Our secession is finished, it's legal, it's official, it's done. All we need to do is own it. All we need to do is own it. So they must now stop me. They must stop me, Scott, from closing the borders. So I make a mistake. And I put on, I had a group of people of 12 people that my close advisors. And I put a message out to the group and I said to them, please keep the communities safe when the borders are being closed. And please be safe in doing so. And one of the people there put that message out on social media and it went public. A week later, police knock on my door with a search warrant that I have illegal firearms in my house and they're coming to arrest me. But I've been having a legal firearm in my house since 1998. I've been a traffic policeman. I have a SWAT diploma, Special Weapons Attacks diploma from the Army during the apartheid years, and I know how to use firearms. I've never broken the law, ever. And they come to arrest me for having an illegal firearm. Because I have a letter saying that one of my generals went overseas, left his firearm in my safe, and somebody told him that I have an illegal firearm, and they came to arrest me.
Wow.
So that is how they put the stop to the closing of the borders at the time. Now, you need to understand, Scott, that their strategy. Now, people ask, now why was this man never arrested for taking down the flags? It was treason. He violated all laws of the country to take down the flag. Why wasn't he arrested? Because everything I did within the parameters of international law. Everything. So there's nothing that they can do to touch me. So in my thinking, why can all the other groups that also want secession not accept the fact that the secession is already done? It's already finished. All they need to do is come home and sign the oath of allegiance. But what they want to do, Scott, they want to change the oath of allegiance for their own benefit. I must now change the wording of the oath of allegiance so that they can benefit from it. It doesn't work that way. And I say to them, then you stay in South Africa. Then you stay under the new apartheid regime called democracy. Then you live there. But the sovereign state of Good Hope is a place of hope, a place of freedom, a place of opportunity. You know, because when there's opportunity, Scott, and opportunity freedom, and there's capability, which we have, and you put that together, you have growth. So you say, yeah, but you're going to rule the country. I say, no, I'm not going to. That's not my responsibility.
Right.
My responsibility as the king is to see that the land and the people is no longer abused. That's my sole responsibility.
Yeah, no.
The governance of the country is going to be done by people that know how to do it and is not politically driven.
Right. Now, can
They're
I
doing
just...
it because they're experts in the field.
I just want to address the side chat and the people. We've got about 700 people watching at the moment. If you have
Oh.
any questions, please fire those questions into the side chat. I have got a number here already from people that I'll be putting to the King shortly. And please remember to subscribe to this channel. We have live streams most nights at 8 p.m. In fact, we've got a whole bunch lined up for the rest of next week. We have very interesting subjects like King Cornelius, fascinating history. And please remember also when you subscribe to ring the bell so that you get the updates. Sorry, King Cornelius, back to you.
So the opportunity freedom is available. If we look at all our youth, Scott, there is children that come from university that have the knowledge. They can't get work. We're going into fourth revolution now, where the knowledge that I had when I'm a qualified boilermaker by profession. I know how to work with my hands. I come out of the traffic college for 6 months. I know the laws of the country.
Right.
But the knowledge that I had acquired those years is just knowledge. But what we need nowadays is artificial intelligence. There's no question about it. We cannot run away from that.
Yeah.
So the children that has this knowledge is not given the opportunity to implement that knowledge for the betterment of the country. So he's saying, let's create opportunity freedom for these children.
You know what I'd love
Now,
you to do,
if we have,
King?
sorry, Scott?
You know what I'd love you to do for me? Just for a few sentences, is just speak some Khoi, because it's such a fantastic language. I love the Khoi language. Can you do that for us?
Sure. I would, if I greet you, I'd say, Kai tuas, which is good day. And I'd say, Matitsu, which means how are you? And in Afrikaans, the Cape slang is Wat gaan so, but I'd say, Kai tuas, Matitsu, and you answer, Kai setidake. And I would say, Ti Matitsu, and you'd say, Kai setidake.
Ah,
So, on that, Scott, when I spoke Afrikaans, what people don't know is that the Afrikaans language is the second language of the Khoi.
yes, it is.
It was not invented by the Afrikaner. It was created by a woman, that same woman I spoke about earlier, Krotoa, because she took the Khoi language, the Danish language, with Javanese influence, and she created the Afrikaans language as a bartering language. And this is why the Cape slang is so easy on Khoi people to use and speak, because it's close to the Khoi language. Because if I would greet you in my mother tongue, I'd say, Hoi. Hoi means hello in my mother tongue.
Right.
Hoi. And all sailors in the world say Hoi. I say, Hoi, Matitsu. And the guy in Cape Town will say, Hoi, wat gaan so?
Yeah.
And I would say, Kai setidake. And you would say, it's Nga. And I would say, Kaios. And you say, Ios, my bro. So people are not aware that the Afrikaner people, who call themselves Afrikaners, made the language beautiful for the use of today. Absolutely, they made it beautiful. The Afrikaans language is such a beautiful language to be spoken, and when I cross over the border to Namaqualand, dan verander my taal heeltemal, ek klink soos 'n Namaqualander. But be that as it may, it's a language that is owned. It belongs to the Khoi, but claimed by the whites. But it's the injustice of the past, Scott, we cannot change.
Yeah.
And we cannot rectify it. That is past. The injustice of the present we need to rectify. Because a few years ago when they wanted to throw down the Taal monument in Paarl. So I said, no, why do you want to do that? When you discover that Afrikaans is not your language. This is why, it's history. We've been taking, even the name Afrikaner. Afrikaner is my family name. I'm the last of the Afrikaner clan. And we're not family.
Yeah.
And they weren't very happy with it. But it's the truth.
Well,
There's no aggression speaking about what I spoke about. It is just truth.
Yeah.
But we've come to it took me a long time, Scott, to overcome the anger against the white man. A long time.
Yeah.
Because when you listen to all the atrocities that has happened, how my people were killed and raped and murdered, how our meat was cut of our bones while we were alive, just to speak the language, stop speaking language. All these things we had to come to terms with. So, because it's our nature as Khoi to be kind, to love, to give, and to give in. That is our nature. That is why it took me a long time, but it was easy. Once I overcame that, it was easy. That's why I can invite them and say, come live in this country, the service to the good of, so that everybody can benefit from it. Because all need to benefit from the land that God has given us as a blessing. So,
Yeah.
do you have any more questions?
Oh, look, we've got dozens of questions here for you, which we're going to get into very shortly. Now, I might kick off with a question from LMC, who says, why do the Khoi refer to themselves as a First Nation when the San predated them in South Africa by millennia?
Oh, then he never had my first opening of who we are. And I repeat it for his benefit. In the very beginning, the only people that roamed the plains of Southern Africa was the Bushmen. Nobody else. And they started trading cattle and fat-tailed sheep with China and Egypt. Some of them ate more meat than the others. Some of them drank more milk than the others. And the children that was born from them were bigger and stronger. And they called themselves Khoi, men of men. So the Khoi is born out of the Bushman, the ancestral family.
So you're basically one and the same.
So who's your first?
Yeah.
The chicken or the egg?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Margaret Temple asks, so the Khoi were the group who made the original land agreements with Van Khoebaha. Are you aware of that?
Oh, that's just...
I've never heard of him.
I keep on telling the white people. Scott, let me get it out of the air, out of my chest, off my chest. I keep on telling people, stop going back to history because it's painful. You people don't understand what has happened. When that treaties was signed, all the chiefs were made drunk, Scott. They were made drunk in the fort. And we couldn't write. We couldn't read and write. And we were told what was on the treaty. And we had to make a cross or a thumbprint. And when the cross or the thumbprint was made, all the chiefs in the room was killed. All the chiefs was killed. So there be no verbal history of what has happened. So I tell people, don't go back there.
Yeah.
You are scratching open wounds that is better left closed.
Yeah.
If you scratch a scar, Scott, it's going to be more tender than the meat next to it. So don't scratch a scar that is trying to heal. Because you now want to bring up things that we are trying to overcome, things that we're trying to forgive and trying to forget, and you bring back all the old wounds and all the old pain, and you're going to create something you don't want.
Yeah, okay.
So leave that.
Well, let's move on to the next question, which is a really interesting one. Johan Hatting has asked, if the king becomes president, or if the Cape secedes, will there be a place for the Afrikaners, the Boere, or may I say all whites as well?
Maybe he came in late. I would say it again. I will not become president. I am not the president. The sovereign state of Good Hope will have professional people governing them. There'll be... We have a 52-page booklet that I'll ask my wife to send out to you, Scott, that you can forward on. That will give the full history and organogram and everything about it.
Right.
But my sole responsibility is to see that the land and the people is no longer abused.
I think the main question was, would the white population be accepted?
That is why we have an undertaking of unity that was signed by the Afrikaner, by the Eurokaner, by the Colored, by the Khoi, on behalf of them, saying that they accept this, and that when you sign the oath of allegiance, you're welcome to move in or stay.
Right. Okay.
Because a lot of them have moved in already, that had signed the oath of allegiance, that had moved from Johannesburg and other areas to the Western Cape already, because they signed the oath of allegiance, because of fear of what is going to happen.
Right.
And without us realizing it, that COVID-19 has pushed this fear to the front.
Now I've got another question here from S.A. Cookpot, who says, which part of South Africa are the Khoi occupying at the moment?
I mentioned earlier, maybe you never heard, that when Jan van Riebeeck asked, who you? And we said, with Khoi, he says, no, we're now Hottentot and Bushmen. The English came along and says, who you? We said, Hottentot and Bushmen. Says, no, you're non-Europeans. The Freeburgers came and says, who you? We said, non-Europeans. Says, no, you're non-whites. Apartheid came along and says, now, who you? We said, no, you're colored. So where every colored person lives,
So the coloured people are basically the Khoi.
Whether they acknowledge they are descendants of the Khoi, whether they don't acknowledge they are descendants of the Khoi, is irrelevant.
Right.
But where every coloured person lives. You see, this is important for people to understand, because if you want to know, who am I really? Where am I from? So when the colonials came here, Scott, they came without wives. And they consummated with the Khoi and Bushmen. Out of that consummation was born Khoi and Bushmen.
Yeah.
So the genes of the father were stronger. The child came out with blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. But the other child was me. When the slaves came over to Indonesia and Malaysia, they came without wives. And they also consummated with the Khoi and Bushmen. The genes, the children born out of that consummation, the genes of the father were stronger. The child came out with sleek hair, sharp features, and a tan complexion. But the other child was me. When the blacks came down from Middle Africa and they saw how beautiful we were, they also consummated the Khoisan. Out of that consummation was born Khoisan. The genes of the father were stronger, so the child came out with curly hair, dark skin, flat features, but the other child was me. When the whites and the blacks consummated, out of that consummation was born a mulatto, which is a Griqua. But they also consummated the Khoi. So now we're saying, hang on, a lot of white people are descendants of the Khoi, a lot of black people are, a lot of Indians are, and most coloreds are. So now do you determine yourself who you are by that knowledge? I hope that answers her question.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ben Hashem has asked a question. Now, I'm just going to tell you what he says. He says, is King Cornelius aware of certain people in Port Elizabeth who were spreading rumours of a plot to take his life and that of his wife? Not to worry, it will be dealt with decisively. Now, I don't know what that's all about. Do you know anything about that?
Oh yes, Scott, my life has been threatened so many times. I was nearly driven off. I was nearly taken out 3 times. But because of my bodyguards that I don't have them anymore. The economy doesn't allow me to have them. But because of the bodyguards I had that is so vigilant, my life was saved 3 times on the road. I was threatened by snipers to be taken out already. My location of my house was put on social media via Google Maps. So yeah, that's a normal thing. But Professor Nagin warned me. He says, you know, Khoebaha, your life is going to be threatened. But it's okay. Don't be scared. They won't take you out. I said, Prof, why? He says, if they take you out, Nelson Mandela becomes a footnote in South African history. Because here you have a Khoi king, Aboriginal, the First Nation king, standing up for his people, claiming back his land, fighting for what he wants. And he dies as a martyr for his people. Do you think there will not be civil war in South Africa because of that? I said, I don't know, Prof. He says, don't worry, they won't take you out. So with that knowledge, Scott, the only thing I fear is God, nothing else.
Right.
I fear nothing other than God. If you want to take me out, I won't say you're welcome, but I'm not scared.
Yeah.
If I was scared, Scott, I would not have gone and done what I did to fight for freedom, not only for my people, but for everybody that wants freedom, without fear. without asking for anything in return. I expect nothing in return. I would like to have things in return, yeah, absolutely. But I expect nothing. So I did this because it's my purpose in life to do it. People often say, but who made you a king? I says, nobody made me a king. I was born a king. My father is still alive. My parents are celebrating 62 years of marriage. My dad's 83, my mother's 82. I still have them around, but my dad handed over responsibility to me in 1999 already. My grandfather was around me all my life. My great-grandmother was around me for 13 years of my life. I am born a king, and the king is only ordained by God, by nobody else. So I am God's servant for the benefit of his people. But I am not your servant. I keep on telling people, I am God's servant, but I am not your servant, so don't treat me as a servant.
Right. Now I've got a
I hope that
question.
answers the question.
I've got a question for you that I've had in my questions, which I haven't got to, and that is, what percentage of Khoi and coloured people are united behind you as king? Are there fractured groups, or are they all united behind you?
No, they're not united behind me. No. You see, it's painful for them that I was there from the very beginning. And I know all these so-called chiefs, or chiefs, no, don't say so-called is derogatory. I know all these people that say they are chiefs. That's the right word. All the people that say they're chiefs, I know them personally. And I know where they come from.
Right.
And I know what they did. I know what they did. So, to not have me in their company, they are scared I'm going to speak the truth. But I won't. It's not our nature to hang out dirty washing up in public. I have a big following. I would like to have all the Khoisan people unite under the royal house of the Khoisan nation. I'm only the head of the royal house of the Khoisan nations. I'm not the only leader. All the other clans have their leaders, and I would like all of them to come home. I've called a meeting for all the leaders to come together. I don't know if they're scared I'm going to speak the truth about the things that I know, but I won't. I won't. It is for the benefit of the people. They just need to come home and forget about past atrocities. We are now looking forward to the way forward to unite everybody so that everybody can benefit.
Right.
I cannot understand why people can be so short-sighted and so narrow-minded about positions and about money. It's all about the money. It's all about the money, Scott. You need to understand that in 1999, when government offered to pay all the Khoi chiefs and all the Khoi headmen, I said, no, stop this nonsense, stop it. Nobody's getting paid. Because if you get paid by government, you are being employed by government, and they will tell you what to do. I suggested to government, we're going to open up a trust, and PricewaterhouseCoopers drove the trust document to us, and you put the money into a trust for the benefit of the Khoi. It happened, and people misappropriated that trust. So you see how sensitive it is, Scott?
Yeah.
So I said, it's okay. Everybody make mistakes. It is not my business to forgive. It's God's business to forgive. It's not my business. I'm not the one that you have to ask for forgiveness for. It's to God. So, and this brings up another topic, that people saying, yeah, that, we only have one king, and the king is Jesus Christ. Absolutely. I am a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I am God's servant. So they say, yeah, basically we don't bow to a hot-knot king. I says, oh, whoa, please don't bow to me. I am not. My God says, I am the Lord your God, and you have no other gods before me. So whoever bows to me makes me a God. Please, I'm not. Because my God is a very jealous God. So, yes, you'll defer to me as the king, but please don't bow to me.
Right.
So now the white people are saying, now the white people understand that, hang on, we're not bowing to a king, we're only deferring to him because he is God's servant, and he's the true bloodline king of the Khoi. So it's okay. I say, forget about your frills. Forget about your issues. if you want a better life for your children and your grandchildren, because there's nothing you can do now to change that other than to unite.
Right.
If that makes sense, Scott, there's nothing else for you to do. Forget about the other people that want to do a secession. Forget about the other people that want to do political thing. Secession is finished. There's nothing else for you to do to change the life of your children and your grandchildren other than unite. Nothing else. So the choice is yours, whether you decide a better life for your children and grandchildren, of which you testify to the whole world, I want a better life for my children, but you're too scared to unite for the betterment of your children.
Right. Now I've got a bunch of questions here. I've got a bunch of questions here for you, so we're just working our way through them. Kenny Shemmons has asked, please ask the king about Rodney and Brian. I don't know what that's all about.
Okay. Yes, they were Yusuf, and they added a lot of value to our life. Absolutely. Rodney and Brian came in as advisors to the royal house of the Khoisan for the sovereign state of Goodham, because they believed that the sovereign state of Goodham was the only way for freedom for the white people. They believed that. And they put in funding in here. They paid for the flags, of which I have to pay back though. But they funded us during that time period to do the things that needs to be done. But I found out later, with all due respect to them, that it was all about the money. What's in it for them? It was not about the true freedom, but it was about making money for them. Because they wanted to control the banking system of the sovereign state of Goodham. To create a digital bank. And I say, yeah, but I have an expert that's already busy with the financial portfolio. So yes, you can join him and add value to the country with the digital currency, no problem. But they wanted to be in charge of the finances of the sovereign state of Goodham. And that is not the policy of the country. The policy is that experts will be in charge of those portfolios. And this is not one expert, Scott, not one expert. We'll have four. We'll have a Khoi, a Khalid, a Eurokaner, and an Afrikaner. And out of those four, they'll choose one person to be the chairperson of that portfolio. So everybody will have equal input. Can people not understand? Can they not see the beauty part of it is that everybody would have a say, and there's going to be a department for ideas. If you have an idea, you put it on paper, you hand it into the department, and you can guarantee that within a few days or a month's time, you get an answer to that idea that you put forward. If it's an idea that the country would benefit from, it will go to the proper authorities. So, how many ideas don't we have, Scott, that is never taken forward? That nobody knows about, because we keep quiet about it, and it can be a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Now I've got.
So I hope that answers the question about Rodney and Brian.
Okay. Now I've got another question from Bruce Basters, and he says, "Please ask the king about the fourth revolution, because you mentioned the fourth revolution earlier. What role would it play in a state that is seceded from the rest of South Africa?"
Very important question that people understand the answer to this is that the reason why we went to the United Nations to apply for observer status at the General Assembly is for us to have bilateral and multilateral agreements and arrangements with other countries. Now, I can't get the cat out of the bag, but what I can say is there's other countries waiting for us so that we can have the arrangements and agreements drawn up. We're living in when I say fourth revolution, I didn't bring in the word. It's a word that is generally known out there, that artificial intelligence and, modern technology is the key word of the day.
Right.
So, but I'm not okay with that. I have no knowledge of it. My son has, but I don't. And other children that didn't have the opportunity, but have the capability, these are children that's going to need to have these things. For example, I'll say it. we're going to need internet. We're going to need internet because everything around the world is about internet. So we have certain agreements drawn up already that when things happen in the future, there'll be internet available in the sovereignty of the globe. Just for one example, I shouldn't speak about it, but just to let you know about the fourth revolution.
Right.
I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. Now, I'm getting quite a few questions which have been answered by King Cornelius. For example, William asks, what is a Eurocana? Now, a Eurocana is an English-speaking white person, and the King's already referred to that in the past. So with questions like that, I'm just going to not ask because they have been answered earlier in this conversation. So if you want to find the answer, something like that, just go to the start of the video and you'll find the answers. Okay, so Valerie Ember asks, the Khoi has chiefs. Nowhere did they have kings. Can you please explain the monarchy?
Sure. I don't know where she gets the history from, but even Jan van Riebeeck tells about the king that came, and he called himself an emperor. And in Jan van Riebeeck's journals, when the emperor came, and his name was Sosoa, when he came on a white ox, and that time royalty was deemed to travel on white ox. Jan van Riebeeck asked Sosoa, he says, please adopt me as your son. So I can be the son of the emperor. And it's written in his journals. Now, I don't know if you know cultural history. In every culture there are chiefs. But then there's a grand chief. One chief above all the chiefs. Now in our culture, and I've explained my lineage to you earlier, we have a king, and then we have paramount chiefs, of which is a regent that's in charge of various chiefs. And each chief is supposed to have his own area. And that is where the clan names come from. The clan names come from a chief that lived in that area, and that was his clan name. So all these clan names in a certain area fell under a paramount chief. And all these chiefs had headmen that worked among the communities. And all these headmen had councillors that worked in the communities. So if you look at the structure in government nowadays, where do you think these government structures come from? From us. From us. Because on the ground we have community workers that works on the ground amongst the people. And they go to the headman and saying, this is what the community needs. And the headman then goes to the chief, or the headman men goes to the chief, and they're saying, for this area we need that, for this area we need that. And the chief then goes, all the chiefs come together with the paramount chief and saying, we in this area need this, and this is what our requirements is.
Right.
And the paramount chiefs come together with the king and saying, this is what my people need. And the king must see that it's done. So that is our organogram, that's our structure for centuries. Where did this person come from? And where did they acquire their historical knowledge from? I don't know. But I know where my history comes from, my history, not history.
Right. Now, Beverly Nokiko has asked, how can we help the king? Is there a way to get in contact with him so that we can offer help?
Yes, there is. There is, Scott. We had two websites. First, the sovereignty.goodope.org website, which was then taken down and sold to an Australian company. I don't know how it managed, but it was managed out of Portugal, but it was gone. And then we had the ssogh.org and .com, and we had all the infrastructure in place, but because we don't have the funds to maintain it anymore, those websites are closed. But we have email addresses where people can contact my wife, which is you can put it on the screen for them. Scott is jennyaddison@gmail.com, and they can communicate with her. She will then tell them the people they can get in touch with for whatever help they want to offer. I think that would be the easiest way
Yeah.
for people to get in contact.
Okay. I've put
Via the
I've put Jenny's email address in the side chat so people can just contact her direct.
Yes. And then with the help they're offering, my wife can then direct them to the various portfolio people that's in charge of that portfolios that would accept the help. Absolutely. We would appreciate it much.
Okay, fantastic. All right, I've put that email address in there. Now, the Khoi liberation movement say claim that Xhosa are part Khoi and very much part of the Western Cape. They proceed to state that historically the Nguni and Bantu also occupied the Cape. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's BS. What is your view on that, King Cornelius?
I can, like if the clerk says, I can categorically state it is untrue. In 1745, the Xhosas came over the Khoi River the very first time. The very, very first time. And when they came over the Khoi River, there was a fierce battle between King Undoda and King of the Khagabe. So that is when the peace treaty was signed. So there was no black people. The only black people that was in the Western Cape was the slaves that was brought in from and the other commanders of the Cape. Those are the only black people that was here. But there was no Nguni. There was no Xhosas, no Zulus, no Pendus, or whatever the names is. None of them were here. After the Katrafi Rebellion in 1777, they started having freedom of movement because they defeated the Dutch up in the Katrafi area. And there was freedom of movement for them. And then they moved down, they wanted to come to the Cape. And then they came to a place called Genatendal, or Genatendal. My grandfather called it Canadian Dadel. But they came to a place called Genatendal, which was the hospital of the Khoi. And all herbs are grown up in the mountains there. So all the sickly people were taken to that area. And when they came there, they were sick. And then they were helped by the Khoi people to get healthy. And a woman named Lena, a lot of people don't know about her, a woman named Lena showed them a shortcut through to Cape Town from Genatendal. Now the only route they knew then was Silauris Pass.
Right.
The oxen track over Silauris. But she showed them a shortcut through to the Cape. And when they came to Cape Town, they told the colonials how to get to Genatendal via the shortcut. And then one day while Lena them was up in the field collecting herbs with the children, the colonials came in, I don't know if it was the Dutch or the English, came into the village and killed all the old people there.
Wow.
And then Lena was angry and she went and she dug a massive big hole. And she made a fire under it and covered it with branches. And she taunted the colonials. She taunted them. And as they charged her, they fell in the hole and they were killed. And there's a gravestone up in Genatendal for Lena for what she's done. But that tells you that only then the black people came into the Cape.
Yeah.
Even though they betrayed us afterwards. But that's a story for another time.
I know historically what you're saying is correct about the blacks being nowhere near the Cape. Now, Alenka Wagner says, do Khoi people support any political parties?
That is all we knew. That is all we knew. In 1976, I was part of the uprising for equal education. Ran in front in 76, going to the Grand Parade, jumped in the train, hijacked the train. Forgive me for laughing. The memory is so exciting, thinking back to that time. We all fought for freedom. When the UDF coming into effect after 1976, wanting freedom, wanting equal education, wanting to be equal. In 1992, in 1994 with democracy, we wanted that freedom. So we made the mark. Politically, we had to make the mark politically to be acknowledged. So he made the mark for our freedom. So everything was politically driven. Everything. Even up until today. Everything is politically driven. Our lockdown is politically driven. Everything in South Africa is politically driven. So yes, everybody has the right. Our slogan at the time was one man, one vote.
Yeah.
It was that freedom we wanted. One man, one vote. And the vote is politics. So yes, people are driven by politics. People live by politics. People are governed by politics. And this is why the sovereign state of Kudu will have no politics.
Right.
So the Khoi people having politics, yes, they have that. That is their right, their political right.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Now, talking about politics, I want to address a point which, for me, is a hugely sore point for people of the coloured people and the Khoi and the Khoisan, etc., and that is that before 1994, they were really treated no better than other groups like the Zulus and the Xhosa under apartheid. And post 1994, when you're supposed to have a rainbow nation, what's happened is that your people have been oppressed again by the ANC government. So you guys have come out at the wrong end of the stick, not only before 1994 but after 1994. Do you want to tell people a bit about how your people are treated, or how they were treated pre-1994 and how they are treated today by the ANC government?
I often relate a story where this professor wrote a book, Martin Lagassic, that's his name, he's late now, Professor Martin Lagassic, wrote a book, Skeletons in the Closet. And if you read that book, it is such a painful book to read, because during the time period where we were not allowed to speak our language, we were not allowed to speak the language. We were told, you speak the language, you're going to suffer the consequences. And when you spoke the language, your meat was cut off your bones while you're alive in the front of the community as a lesson for them not to speak the language. And then when you died, your body was boiled, your meat was boiled of your bones in front of the community, and your bones were sent to Europe for scientific studies. So this is why we don't speak our language anymore,
right,
out of fear. So during the apartheid years, my grandfather was my complexion. My father is fair. And he used to walk with my father as a child in Cape Town Station. And he would go to the white section to take the boy to the toilet. And the police would stop him and say, "Hold not. Where are you going to with the boy?" "With the young master." He'd say, "I'm taking the young master to the toilet, sir." And he'd take my father to the toilet and he'd come back and he'd laugh. And he'd tell the policeman, "The young master has been relieved, sir." And he would laugh because to him that was fun. That was him taunting the police. Me growing up, like I said in 76, I lived that. But as a child, I get to spend my school holidays out in Gordon Strand, Somerset West Strand area. And we used to walk on the pavement on the white beach and look around, looking for a policeman. And we don't see one, you put your feet in the white sand and you walk there. And one day I didn't see, and this policeman smacked me into the sand. And he says to me, "Ought not. Don't you know this is a white people's beach?" And I can't tell you how I felt. This is not, it wasn't be diplomatic. The people would take the children to the toilet because the child wants to use the toilet desperately. And it would only be the white's toilet. And the policeman would stand and says, "Ought not. Go pee in the bush." Or it's okay, the child can pee in his pants, it's not a problem. That's the things we had to go through, that I personally went through. I worked up in Alco in Kimberley, and I walk on the pavement, tired from work. I'm in my 20s, spot 20s, and now I'm a big boy. And I'm not thin, eh? I'm not thin. At the age of 13, I wore a size 7 shoe. I was 130 pounds. So I'm not a small boy here. So I'm walking down on the sidewalk in Kimberley, and there's big Boer comes walking down towards me. And they shout already, what not, look in the pot. Oh, sorry, English. Says, what not, walk in the road, because the pavement belongs to us. And I had to walk in the road for fear from getting a hiding. And this is how we were treated during the apartheid regime. With democracy, our opportunities were taken away. You know, somebody related to us, he says, you know, it's like a soccer game. During apartheid, you had the whites in front, and they controlled the economic ball.
Right.
And you had the coloureds in the middle, and sometimes they got the ball. And you had the blacks at the back, and they never got the ball. But now with democracy, we have the blacks in front, and they control the ball. And we have the coloureds in the middle, and they never see the ball. And you have the whites at the back, and the ball is kicked over the heads of the coloureds to the whites, and the whites kick the ball over the heads of the coloureds to the blacks, and we stand there watching the ball. So, again, we in between. We are lost people. No benefit. Nothing. Only those that was part of the ANC good boys, that exiled, that left the country, that came back, that had to be rewarded for their good work, for running away. Those are the people that's benefiting from it. But us that stayed behind and bit the bullet. Oh, tough times, Scott. Tough times.
Yeah.
There's days when, let me tell you about the tough times today, man. Let me tell you about it. Across the mountain from me, the grandmother's making a big pot of maize meal, and she's stirring it in the big pot with a big spoon. And she's crying. I says, Granny, now, why are you crying? She says, ah, my child, there won't be enough food for the children today to eat. And I got no cash on me. And she goes to the back room, and she comes back with a newspaper, and she tears it up, and she throws it into the pot of maize meal, and she stirs it, and it becomes black from the ink.
Oh, no.
And she's smiling. And I say, Granny, and now? She says, ah, my child, all the children will be able to eat tonight. And then I realized that my children are eating maize meal and newspaper for supper.
Oh, no.
A few years ago, Scott, they phoned me from St. Helena Bay. They said we had to kill the neighbor's dog to feed the children. And I got very angry. Oh, I got angry. They said, it's okay. Half the dog is stood in the fridge for tomorrow. And I blew my top, and the old people told me, it's okay, relax, the children ate. But it's not our culture to eat dog. And then one old woman said to me, you need to realize, it's okay what they did, but what about the boy that lost his pet? Now we don't realize that the consequences of the things that we do has far-reaching actions and consequences. We don't realize that.
Yeah.
Now, there's this old woman that made this pot of maize meal for the children with the newspapers. Her thing was the children could eat all. But how much damage did that newspapers cause to the children's system?
Oh,
and
terrible.
the ink?
Yeah.
Now, these are the real tangible things that we see. Now, in 2014, oh, you're letting me go on a tangent, Scott. In 2014, I go to government. I say to government, you know, the mineral wealth of the country is valued at 36 trillion rand. 36 trillion rand. If we give one share to every citizen in the country and put a monetary value attached to it of 1,000 rand, in 20 years, everybody will be millionaires. But we're only going to give away 5.5 trillion rand of the 36 trillion. When I use the word give away, they change their mind, you know.
Right.
And it was an organization called ISO, the Institute for Economic and Social Upliftment. So, hang on, if they were not prepared to give 1% of the mineral wealth, because the Freedom Charter says the land belongs to all who live in it. So on that I went to them. So if the land belongs to all who live in it, and we give 1% to every citizen, and you put a monetary value of 1,000 rand attached to them, and we had the accountants and the lawyers ready to do the blue chip thing. We had all that in place, Scott. All that to say was yes.
Yeah. Now I've got
then this, what is happening now,
Yeah.
that my people are suffering under this lockdown, would not have happened.
Right.
then people would not have stand in long queues and fighting for food and being hungry. Would not have happened if only they had given one share in 2014, with 1,000 rand attached to it. That would have been the economic power now.
Right.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of questions here. I'm going to just address the side chat, guys. I've got about 20 questions still to ask King Cornelius. So I'm going to ask if we can hold the questions for a while. Please remember to subscribe to the channel to be kept informed. We have live streams every night at 8, and they're always very interesting. And tonight has been an absolute delight. It's such a pleasure and an honor. For the first time I've ever had a king on my channel, so this has been fantastic. And when you subscribe, please remember to ring the bell so that you get the updates. If you don't do that, you won't get the updates, because I put up videos every day. Now, okay, let me just go through these questions. Yeah, Gordon Blues has asked, I have long suspected from their appearance that both Mandela and Eugene Terblanche have some Khoisan ancestry. Is this true or likely? Well, I can answer for Mandela because he was definitely part Khoisan. Maybe you'd like to explain that, King Cornelius?
You know, having Khoisan blood in you, that is your choice, who you want to identify, to be identified with. He identified with as Xhosa. That was his identity. But being Khoi, when you say I am Khoi, it means that I live by the value systems of my culture. And he definitely did not live by the value systems of his culture. And I can say that because out of personal experience. Now, I don't speak ill of the dead. I never do. But I speak of my experience. I annexed Robben Island because of Krutowa's grave site. I annexed Robben Island. And when they opened the gateway to Robben Island, they invited Nelson Mandela to be the keynote speaker. So I gate crashed that place again. And we were 7 of us, and I wouldn't take a seat, so I stood in front of him, about 3 meters from him, if not closer, but I stood that close to him.
Right.
All the time from his speech. He put his speech down and he spoke about the Khoisan people of Robben Island and blah, blah, blah. So, but the reason I went there is because when I was a traffic policeman during the apartheid years, we did escorts from Portsmouth prison to the High Court, and I was one of the escorts that escorted him to the High Court. And then he told us when I become president, you know, you can come talk to me anytime. So that time was an opportune time for me to go talk to him. So when he was finished with his speech, they took him around the back, outside the back of the building, and I followed. And when I opened the back door, he was sitting in the back seat of the car. And he looked back, he turned around and looked back and looked at me as they drove away. So, like I said earlier, Thabo Mbeki wouldn't speak to me, Zuma wouldn't speak to me, Ramaphosa wouldn't speak to me, and neither Nelson Mandela also refused to speak to me. So, he might have had Khoi blood, but he wasn't Khoi.
Yeah.
Because that is not Khoi culture.
Well,
so anybody that has Khoi blood in them, that is their choice. How they identify themselves, by what they call themselves. But Khoi means, when I say I'm Khoi, it's by the value systems that I live by that makes me Khoi.
right. Well, Mandela himself admitted that he had Khoi blood. He actually said that in a speech. And if you look at his cheeks, you can see they're very high, and his skin color is sort of similar to the Khoi skin color. And yeah, he actually admitted it in the speech. It goes back to, I think, his grandmother was Khoi, and she married, or she was married, one of the wives of the chief, the Xhosa chief that resulted in Mandela. So there's definitely Khoi blood there. Okay, let's continue. Okay, where's that question? Here we are. Inov Rapley says, what significance is Wat Maria, also known as Maria Evert, to the Khoi nation?
I don't know her. Will you ever? No.
Okay.
But anybody that's out there that's adding value to the Khoi nation, thank you. Anybody out there that I am not aware of that is doing something to make changes, thank you. If I'm not aware of you, then it's not that I don't know about you. I've just been busy with other things and I've never been told about you. So my apologies to those that is doing things that I'm not aware of.
Right. Now, Ben Alermo, he's asked a very interesting question. I'm going to put a bit of a slant on it. He says, 2017, I have not heard on any international or local news channels that you seceded the Cape successfully. And I need to just say, Ben, before King Cornelius answers this question, that the mainstream media are fake news. They're a complete and utter disgrace. Over to you, King Cornelius.
I agree with you. Even Fox News. I went to them in Fifth Avenue in New York, told them about secession. They wouldn't cover the story. I have photographs where I've stood in front of them in full traditional clothes and told them that whenever the borders are going to be closed, I won't invite them. But there is many television companies and radio stations throughout America, Ireland, Australia, Canada, that had interviews with me during the time period of the secession. So there are many YouTube links that if he's interested, he can go watch it. It's available. That will give him insight into what has happened during that time period up until now.
Right. Okay, now S.A. Cookpot says, are there a Wikipedia page about the history of the Khoi? Oh, absolutely. Just type in Khoi in Wikipedia and you'll find a whole lot of information on there. Okay, now Tyron Askew has asked, can you ask the King for the meeting minutes of the NCCC? I don't know what the NCCC is, but maybe you know.
The National Khoisan Consultative Council. Oh, that's scratching deep. In 2001, there was a National Khoisan Consultative Conference in Oudtshoorn. And I was not invited to that conference. I jumped the bus to go with. Whenever there's a meeting about Khoi, I'm not invited, so I go crash it because I know too much. So I go with, and Professor Jati Bredenkamp, who was the head of the historical department at University of Western Cape, he was the convener of that, funded by government. Each province gave 70,000 rand, which added up to 490,000 rand for this particular conference. So all the Khoi was invited from throughout the whole South Africa, which is called the National Khoisan Consultative Conference, where most of the leaders went to. So when I came there, they gave me a delegate badge. Later on, they took it away. They says, no, you can't have a delegate badge anymore. You need to have a visitor's badge, the observer's badge. So they gave me an observer's badge. And they came back later and said, no, you can't have an observer's badge, you have a visitor's badge. So I took it and I went inside. As long as I got a badge to go in, that was important.
Yeah.
And I sat with my people, and then when I asked the question, put my hand up, and I stood up, asked the question to the Professor Jati Bredenkamp. He said to me, you don't have the authority to ask questions here. I says, why? He says, you have a visitor's badge. Visitors aren't allowed to ask questions. The observers, the white observers at the back can ask questions, and the delegates can ask questions, but visitors are not allowed to. And then there was an uproar within the podium. It's a Khoi conference, and the Khoi is not allowed to ask questions. And then I found out later that all the delegates that was there, that had delegate badges, went into a secluded room behind locked doors, and there was voting. And this group of people was voted in as the spokesperson for government. And then Jati Bredenkamp automatically becomes the curator of the Museum of Natural History in Cape Town, and is no longer at the university. So now we have people like Cecil Lafleur and Joseph Little and all those other people. They are now on this board that represents the National Khoisan Council. That is part of government. So hang on. It started in the back room at the National Consultative Conference, where the National Khoisan Council was established, that is now the spokesperson for government on Khoisan issues. And I was there, but I wasn't part of it. So now I tell the Minister of Traditional Affairs, says, we disband the National Khoisan Council. Myself and many other Khoi leaders drafted the document, signed it, handed it to the Director of Traditional Affairs, and the Minister of Traditional Affairs sends me an email and says, you have no authority to disband the National Khoisan Council because it's a government institution. So, whoa, we never knew that. So the National Khoisan Council, the spokesperson for the Khoi, is a government institution, and they make decisions for the Khoisan people. I hope that's the right answer, and not something else.
So that's still as it is today?
As it is today.
Wow.
The National Khoisan Council that helped draft the Traditional Khoisan Leadership Bill is a government institution paid by government, who's the spokesperson for the Khoisan people and have no mandate from the Khoisan people.
Well, I know Cecil Lafleur very well, because he's obviously a Griqua, and he lives near Plettenberg Bay at, what's it, Kronshoek, I think it's called. And, you know, he's a very well-spoken man. And, yeah, that's interesting. But clearly, as the king, you should have a voice in that committee. Anyway, let's continue with the questions. Cornelius says, why is the king only surfacing now? Why only making these claims now? Why is he and his family only making themselves now and not in the past when the new South Africa started? Well, I guess that might be a media blackout, but I'll leave that in your hands to answer, King Cornelius.
In 2001, I went to the waterfront and I annexed the waterfront. It was front page on the Sunday, August. I went to the United Nations and read out the letter of annexation at the United Nations in front of 900 different indigenous people and all government representatives in the world. In 2003, I annexed a farm in Stellenbosch that the farmer bulldozed the ablution facilities and electricity because he wanted the farmers off the work of the land, even though the graves on the farm was there from 1890. Eventually, after I annexed the land, the farmer reneged and reallocated the people. Then I have running water and good accommodation. In 2009, I annexed the mountain, the Sentinel Mountain in Hout Bay, to stop government from selling the mountain. I stood in front of rubber bullets and tear gas. So it was on national television. In 2010, I'm invited to Germany to the World Heraldry and Genealogy Conference, with 55 scientists throughout the whole world gathered together to discuss heraldry and genealogy. And I was invited as a keynote speaker because the theme of that conference was identity. And we, being claimed as the oldest people in the world, I was invited there. And the newspapers in Germany says, the king of the Khoi is coming. When I arrived there, I was treated like a king. I was given the status as a king. And it was nice, and I was nearly overwhelmed by it, but I had to remind myself that I am from South Africa. But at that place, while the mayor of Stuttgart was addressing us, the Slovakian government representatives came forward and stopped the mayor from talking. I was wondering what the hell's happening now. And they said, you know, we study heraldry and we study genealogy. And throughout history, the king always runs in front in battle, but never in the 21st century. But this king stood in front of rubber bullets and tear gas for the benefit of his people to stop them from selling the mountain. And they gave me an award of bravery for doing that. For the first time in my life, I was speechless. But you South Africans don't know about it. In 2014, I was invited to the United Nations to receive the 20th Century King's Award of Achievement. 12 kings of Africa was invited. I was the only king of South Africa to be invited. So I go to government and I says, please, can you fund my trip to receive this award at the United Nations? And they say we only fund cultural events in South Africa, not outside South Africa.
Yeah, yeah.
So I get a German benefactor, and he pays my trip to America, and I get the 20th Century King's Award of Achievement. I get a Congressional Award, a Senatorial Award, and other awards. And I say to the Americans, I says, you know, in America you say you're the land of the free, the home of the brave, but you still draw the line at the N-word. In South Africa, we say we have the best democracy in the world. All men are equal before the law, except the Khoisan people. And they couldn't believe it. They say, you're living in the reverse apartheid state? I says, absolutely, because nobody told you. Now, you want to know why I was not exposed over all these years, 20 years of fighting? I cannot tell you why I was not exposed. I can tell you why they didn't want to expose me. Because they didn't want to let the man on the street become aware that there's somebody out there fighting for their rights, fighting for their freedom, fighting for their opportunities. And now that we have a sovereign state of Good Hope, I'm still blocked on media. So the only way we can do it is via social media. And what Scott is doing now is one of the methods that I can do it. So I hope that answers your question.
You're always welcome to come onto this channel. It's lovely to talk to you. Now, Tyron Askew has asked a question. He says, and this is a shout out to Davy Oosthuizen, who I see is here, and he's asked the same sort of question. Davy's a good friend of this channel, and he's one of our channel heroes. There are a few channel heroes on here, and I don't want to miss anyone out, but you know, he's a farmer in the Free State and donates a huge amount of feed. Now, okay, the question is, does the king agree with expropriation of land without compensation?
To be frank and to be diplomatic about that, I'm not interested in that. Because in the sovereign state of Good Hope, there's going to be no misappropriation of land without any compensation. The land belongs to the people. So what happens in South Africa is South African business. I have no authority in South Africa, but I'm going to have authority in the sovereign state of Good Hope, because my sole responsibility is to see that the land and the people is no longer abused. So the laws of South Africa is not going to be applied within the sovereign state of Good Hope. No, absolutely not. So we have our own laws and our own policies, and you know, once we read the 52-page booklet and we understand of what the sovereign state of Good Hope is all about and why it was created and who it was created for, then South Africa must deal with South Africa's business. That's none of my business. So sorry for the people living in South Africa that wants to live there, that has property there. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do about it. My concern is the sovereignty of Good Hope. And before you ask the question, why didn't I take the whole South Africa? Because I can't manage it. I can only manage what I took.
Yeah. Well, it's a sensible area to secede, isn't it? I mean, I just on that question, there are two other groups, the ULA and Cape Exit, who are clearly looking at the same strategy as you are in the secession of a part of the Cape to break away from the rest of South Africa. Do you have any discussions with them or any communication with them?
Oh, I had discussions with them. And line marks, and they were disrespectful to me. Des Palm tried to talk to me, but I saw their agenda and I wouldn't listen to them, because they want to go the referendum and the political route. And are you crazy? Are they crazy? Where are they going to get 2.5 million people to vote for them? Never. 1.6 million people? Never. It's impossible. So going the political avenue People have tried, political groups have tried, Cape Party has tried. There's no way that they can overpower the majority in this country. They must be realistic about it. They can wish, they can dream, but it's not going to happen. So for ULA and for Cape Exit and for all other parties that still want to do a secession, you cannot do a secession within a secession. It's going to be treasonous. You will be exported back to South Africa. So if you want to secede within the sovereign state of Kudu, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a serious problem. Because if you secede within a secession, then you're treasonous. So we will just send you back to South Africa, and you'll live your life, the rest of your life in South Africa under those conditions that you're living now. So I've never been so outspoken, ever. I've spoken amongst my people and told them this is going to be the consequences of people wanting to do a secession within a secession. When they tell me that my Professor Nagin, who is a jurisconsult, don't know anything about secession, I try not to get angry, Scott. I try desperately hard not to get angry. Because when you get angry, you invite the demon of anger into your heart.
Right.
But be that as it may, Professor Nagin was the advisor to the Shwa nation in Ecuador. And when the Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People came out, he took that declaration and converted that and made it their constitution. And they then took this to the Equatorial government and presented this constitution to the Equatorial government and says, this is our constitution, we want to be part of government. And they had no choice but to include them into government. So the secession that Professor Nagin did there with them was successful. So the leader of the Shwa nation sends me their constitution. He says, all you do is you change the name from Shwa to Khoisan, which is the identical document that 143 countries had signed. So I changed the name from Shwa to Khoisan, and we adopt this as the constitution of the Royal House of the Khoisan nation. So now the sovereign state of Kudu is formed. And we take our constitution, and it becomes part of the constitution of the sovereign state of Kudu, because we changed the name from Khoisan to sovereign citizens, which means that 143 countries had already signed our constitution, or part of our constitution. So whoever says that Professor Nagin doesn't know what he's talking about didn't do due diligence. Now, after we did our declaration of secession in 2017, Catalonia did theirs. And Professor Nagin said to me, he says, why didn't they listen to me? I said, what do you mean, Prof? He says, they were waiting on you to see what you were doing so that they could do it, because I told them what to do. And all they had to do was not go via the referendum, but go to the King of Spain. And they didn't want to go to the King of Spain because they had conflict with the King of Spain. So they went via the referendum, and what happened to them? We know the story. So if Professor Nagin advised the Shwa nation, the sovereign state of Kudu, and Catalonia, then he must be doing something right. Now, why would he still be a jurisconsult if he advised people wrongly? And he said to me, I said to him, Professor, now what about the lawyers in South Africa, the advocates in South Africa? He said, they're all stupid. I said, oh, Prof, don't say that. He says, they're stupid because they study South African law. They should have studied international law. Then they would have known what I'm talking about. Because the lawyers in South Africa... Now, I'll answer that to you also, Scott. When I went and I went to the High Court, laid a charge against Ramaphosa and the South African government not to have elections in the sovereign state of Kudu.
Right.
So the thing is served on the state attorneys, and they sent me a letter back saying, according to the articles of the High Court, you need to have a physical address within 8-kilometer radius of the High Court. I don't. So I go to some attorneys and advocates that I know in the area, And I says, can I use your address just for them to serve the documents on you? No, you can't. Nobody in Cape Town was prepared to give me the address just for the state attorneys to serve the documents on me. So one advocate says, but hang on, the High Court has to give you a PO Box address. So the High Court gives me a PO Box address. So the state attorneys then refused to supply me with a return affidavit or supporting affidavit to my 400-page affidavit. Because my affidavit was approved by Professor Nagin and 3 other addendums to it, which makes it a 400-page document. So the 3rd of May, I go to court, and I say, that now, why don't I get a reply? Because the elections is on the 8th of May. They can't reply now. No, they reply the 17th of May, after the election. I says, my court case is to stop the elections in the sovereignty of the Bantu. So yeah, one young Khoi woman told me in the court, she says, you can get an urgent sitting today. So one of my advisors and I walked 5,500 footsteps in that building in one day.
Wow.
And we get an urgent sitting. We get an urgent sitting at 3:30 in the afternoon. The judge says, serve this on the state attorneys, and we'll sit at 4 o'clock. We run around, we serve the state attorneys, they run in there at 4 o'clock, and the judge says, who's the representing the state? She says, the senior counsel is not here, she'll only be available tomorrow, and blah, blah, blah. So the matter is postponed till the next day. So the next day we come to court. They ask me, who's representing you? I says, nobody can represent me. I feel that I'm the most highest qualified international law student in South Africa at the moment, because I have 11 years of Professor Nagin's knowledge with me. Now, then the judge said to me eventually, after I spoke to her, she said to me, I have no authority over you. I cannot make decisions. I have no authority over you. The matter is between you and Parliament. So, what does that answer tell you, Scott? That the legal fraternity in South Africa don't know international law.
Well,
so, there's people from Hula and Cape Exeter saying that Professor Nagin and the other lawyers in South Africa know the most about secession. I beg to differ. Then they must have knowledge and expertise like Professor Nagin and Professor Harkin from Sweden, who's my advisors. Then they can speak. Otherwise, they must keep quiet. You know, my grandfather has a saying. My grandfather had a saying. He says, "My boy, some people will say what they know, and they say something, and some people will say what they know, and they also say something. But you always say what you know what you say, because they say a lot. No, I know what they say. I leave that. I need to be diplomatic.
Yeah. Now, I have to ask you this follow-up question on that. Is anyone taking the new state that you have formed seriously? Because it seems like business as usual in the Cape. There's nothing different. It's been 2.5 years.
As I said earlier, Scott, it was my mistake. I made a mistake, and I own it. That I let the cat out of the bag before the time for them to stop from closing the borders. Many countries in the world is waiting for us to do what is necessary for them to support us. Now you need to understand that because 143 countries had signed the Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People, they, in that signing of that document, they say they will support us. By them signing that document, they are saying that they will support. So all we have to do, when we started with the Declaration of Secession, just after the Declaration, every government throughout the world has a copy of our Declaration of Secession. Every government was delivered to them. Some of them was courier delivered, but every government has it. The Ukrainian ambassador, I handed to her personally. Other ambassadors stamped and signed, they received it. So, but I'm not going to tell you who is in support of me or support the service that we do, because I've learned my lesson by letting the cat out of the bag.
Right. Okay, now Devon Wills asked a question which is pretty closely associated to what you've just been talking about. He says, as per the United Nations, which countries recognize the new country? In other words, the area you've seceded.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you.
Okay.
There come a time when I'll tell you, but not now.
Right, okay.
Allow me that place. I need to protect my people.
That's fine. Michael Lingwood, was Goliath Istavek not the last paramount chief of the Korana tribe, according to the newspaper of 1840, which are in the archives in the Free State?
That would be, I have no idea. The Korana clan would have their history and their knowledge. And they would treasure that. That had to be their treasure point, who their paramount chief was and their history. My responsibility is to see that my people are safe. And for inviting all the clans of all the Khoisan people of South Africa to come home and to come together. Their history is their history, and they must preserve it. Like I preserve my history, they must preserve their history. It's important.
Right. Now I've got two further questions here for you, which are very similar, so I'll ask them at the same time. Jeevan Singh asks, how does the king earn a living? And Raymond Fitzgerald asks, how will the people within this new state survive, e.g. food, production, business or state-owned enterprises?
Yeah. How I earn my living? My wife is a herbal practitioner. God has blessed me with healing hands, so I make medicine for her. We have oils that we sell through Khoisan oil and cannabis oil and other oils and other herbs, and she has a clientele of patients. That's how we live, from hand to mouth. I'm the only king in South Africa that do not get any money from government. Other kings get, Zwelithini gets 59 million a year from government.
Yeah.
Other kings get up to 2 million a year from government for their families. I don't get 1 cent. So they know that by economically starving me and taking away opportunities, when they arrested me, they told me, you're 60 years old. Why don't you just retire and leave this nonsense? I can't. I can't. So that's how I live. How the people in Somerset groups going to live? We have economic plans in place. Absolutely. There'll be no. This is what we've been planning. There'll be no taxes or minimal taxes, where we plan that you're not going to be taxed on the monies you earn, but on the monies that you spend. So for every percentage of monies that you spend goes back to the state, which will teach you how to learn to save. So you know that by spending money unnecessarily, you're being taxed on it. Businesses will be paid minimum tax so that their company can grow. It's about adding value to the nation. Foreign investments, the same thing, minimum tax, but a buy clause that if you leave it in 5 years, you have to pay backdate the tax to the beginning from the maximum tax. So we know they'll stay in 5 years, and in 5 years it's skills transfer. It's about growth. Our people are very resilient. We've learned over the lockdown period how resilient they are. That by not earning a salary, they still MacGyver. So yes, we were the ones that built South Africa. We built the castle. We built Cape Town. We know how to MacGyver. So years ago, we used to have street vendors, fish hawkers. Those are all gone. People that know how. Now we have foreigners doing it in our country, coming from other countries, living from refugee status, refugee funds, coming to do things in our country and taking away opportunities. Again, I say again, opportunity freedom and capability freedom. How that? Read more about the Sovereignty of Good Hope, which will empower you and increase your understanding of what is going to happen and how it's going to happen.
Right, now I've actually got a very interesting question. Hein Marx is actually watching the live stream, and he said, so if we as the ULA need to go the legal route, then here now he says we will never get the votes. His answer is to ignore the law and just secede.
Oh, I don't know. I don't break the law. You know, one of the most important things in the sovereignty of Gudo, one of the most important things, is that when you sign the oath of allegiance, you say, I will uphold the principles of the rule of law and the rights and dignity of every human being will be respected. Those are the two most important things in the oath of allegiance. Now, if you want to break the law, I can't condone that. Because everything I've done within the parameters of the law. So how can I encourage you to go break the law? If you break the law in the sovereignty of Gudo, they're the same consequences. Just our punishment will be more severe. Because South Africa's punishment is very lenient. And they overlook criminals. Sovereignty of Gudo will be punished by the principles of the rule of law. So I wouldn't advise people to break the law in the sovereignty of Gudo. Scott, it's not going to be advisable for them. They mustn't do it. Please, don't do it.
Okay. Now, this is probably an associated question because it really comes back to the nitty-gritty of this secession that you've set up for the Cape. And Jutta Tratterful asks, what is the way forward for the succession to be finalized and borders closed? Because it's lovely to have a dream and talk about it, but, you know, if it's not a reality, it's nothing.
It's not a dream. It's not a dream. It's real. I have the paperwork to show how real it is. The only thing we need, oh my Lord. The only thing we need, people, is to unite. That's the only thing. Unite. I said earlier, if you want a better life for your children and your grandchildren, then the only thing you need to do is unite. The only thing. There's nothing more you can do to change it. So if you don't want to unite, then you are lying to yourself to say that I want freedom for my children and grandchildren. Then you're lying to yourself. And that's the most difficult lie to accept. The most difficult lie to accept is when you lie to yourself and you believe it's the truth. You say, I want to make a change for the benefit of my children, my grandchildren. What are you going to do? All you have to do is unite. That's all.
Okay, now...
Yeah, Scott, I think my time is up. I spent 2.5 hours with you. It's
I really appreciate your time. There are only a couple of questions to go, but look, I respect that you've had a long day, and I really appreciate your time. What I'd like to do before you go is just thank all the moderators for the excellent work they do in the side chat. Thank people who've come and joined us in this live stream discussion, and obviously I'd like to thank the King for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having him here, and your depth of knowledge in the history is astounding. And well, if you want to know the history, we obviously come to King Cornelius. Now, is there a message you'd like to give to everybody who's watching this video now, who might watch it later, from you personally?
Oh yes, please, thank you, Scott. Many people know about the sovereignty of Gudo. A lot of them don't. But everybody has the desire for freedom and for change and for opportunity. What the Lord has allowed me to put in place and given me the strength to do, I cannot do alone. I cannot do alone. I need help. However way you think you can add value to the sovereignty of Gudo and 15 million people, please do. Do not hesitate. But if you cannot add value, then all those that pray, please help me pray that God opened the way for us to complete our cessation soonest. Because without prayer, without hope, and without faith, we're going nowhere. So help me pray that this come to fruition. Thanks very much, God, and God bless you all. In my mother tongue, I would say Kamaku. Kamaku means thank you with deep gratitude.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. All right, guys. Look, I think this has been a really fascinating discussion, and I, for one, am going to go and re-listen to the whole thing because some of the history that was brought up here I never knew about, and you know, as I said, the knowledge of King Cornelius is fantastic. Once again, please stay safe, guys. Please look after yourselves. Take care. I've thanked the moderators. Just another high five, guys. Thank you. And for those who watch this video later, I'm just going to ask King Cornelius a quick, simple question. Is it well, if something happens that is important that you need to publicize, and obviously the mainstream media don't help you at all, you can always contact Marlena, who's the contact who contacted you originally. She's my right-hand person here in the Loving Life channel, and we can set up another live stream for you to discuss whatever it is. So just know you have a alternative media or a social media option to get your story out.
Thank you very much, Scott, and God bless you and your helpers.
Thank you. And just before we go, please, guys, remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates, and please, as I said just now, take care. I'm signing off now, and I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. when I'm going to be talking to the beekeeper, and he's going to be talking about food security and why South Africa is in a whole heap of trouble. Bye for now.